Media Day is in the books. Now the season is officially underway as the Bulls training camp has started with a preseason game right around the corner for the Chicago Bulls. We're going to talk about some of the bigger takeaways from Media Day, especially Coby White's injury, Miles Buzelis wanting to be most improved player, and what the chances are that he legitimately has to get that. And the Bulls have laid out that they will not be skipping steps and that they plan to focus on development and the now. We're going to talk about all those things and more right after this. What's going on, Bulls fans? Welcome to another episode of Chicago Bulls Central, your number one spot for everything Chicago Bulls related. I'm the host, Hayes, but more importantly, you guys can follow the channel at Bulls Central Pod on every social media platform we happen to be on. With that said, let's go and get into the content for today, y'all. And I want to start off this talking about Coby White's injury, right? That was kind of one of the bigger revelations to come out of Media Day, is that Coby White suffered a calf injury that is going to have him limited the first week or so of training camp. Arturas Karnisovas saying this: Coby is going to be limited. He had a calf strain in August, but we were working him back slowly. He's going to be limited in training camp and preseason. Hopefully we can see him at the end of the preseason, but our focus is on being ready for the regular season. Coby himself said this: I strained my calf like a month ago. I've been dealing with that. So I'll be pretty limited the first week of training camp and then see how it goes. I'm still ramping up. It's nothing major, mild sprain. It's continuing to get better. Obviously, the calf is nothing to play with, so we're taking it slow. Now, that's a solid quote. I think, like, you don't want to play with calf injuries. And, I talked about when we did the initial recap of Media Day, and Coby White talked about it too, like calf injuries sometimes are a precursor to an Achilles thing going on, and that's really that's when you get into the place of it turning into something way more, right? And so the Bulls being cautious with it is perfect. Like, you don't want to do that. And yesterday, I had asked, if losing Josh Giddey or Coby White to injury, which one would hurt the Bulls the worst? And I had no idea that Coby had strained his calf, none at all. So like, it wasn't intentional, y'all. I didn't have any insider information. I had no idea that was what was going on. But it is good that the Bulls are dealing with it in the way, because the last thing you want is to start off the season with a major injury or something that then can linger on and can turn into something bigger. So rest up. Him being limited in training camp is fine. We know what Coby White is. Coby White talked about, growing as an off-ball player, wanting to be a better backcourt mate with Josh Giddey, and that's kind of what he prepared for this offseason, wanting to shoot 40% from three. You can't do any of that if you end up, if your calf stuff turns into an Achilles thing. And, they didn't say that, right? It was asked, and, of course, Coby White talked about, like, yeah, of course, it's an obvious injury, but, so you just want to play it safe with that. But what that does do now, with Coby White being more limited in training camp and in preseason, this opens up an opportunity for somebody who's going to be on the back end of the bench to make an impact, right? And that's really what I want to see here, is who now takes this opportunity in training camp to show a little bit more. The Bulls are still trying to figure out who's going to be the starting three. I would imagine that Ayo Dosunmu may end up starting at the two in preseason games that Coby White does sit. And again, that could not be the case. They could want to take a look at other players, but that does open up. You're already in training camp, in preseason. The rotation is already going to be a little bit funky, right? But now, a player like Dalen Terry, who, when he was on CHGO, talked about wanting to come in and make an impact this year and wanting to, show that the work that he put in this summer and preparing his body and those type of things. Now you have an opportunity to show that. It's going to open up more minutes as well for players, not even that's going to necessarily play guard, because the rotation, Kevin Huerter can play shooting guard, Ayo can play shooting guard. So even some of the players that are going to play on the wing, the small forward, like a Julian Phillips, a Patrick Williams, who wants it, right? Who takes advantage of this opportunity to use preseason to maybe show a little bit something that they may have not had the chance to do before. And that's really what we want to see what happens here with the Chicago Bulls. This, like, again, Coby White, it's nothing serious. They haven't presented it as anything overly serious. It seems like they feel like they got ahead of it pretty well. They're going to rest him to make sure that he's healed up and ready to go. So that's good. So now we can pivot and looks at, like, who's going to take advantage of this. And that's what preseason is for. That's what, opportunities are for. And we'll get to see if anybody grabs the proverbial bull by the horns and make something happen with it. And if they can, great. Like, I think that'll be amazing for this team to be able to do that. It sucks that you're starting off the season with the injury. Make no mistake about that. That absolutely does suck. You don't like to see that. But if we're taking anything else away from it, everybody's full go. And part of the reason, we talked about a couple of episodes ago that, the Bulls, their Exhibit 10 contracts, they went ahead and waived those. They're going to convert that to G League contracts. But the reason why those guys aren't coming into training camp, because the Bulls want to take a look at who's here, right? They're two-way contracts, they're 15-man roster. They're taking a look at that. They're going to figure out who's here, there, and we're going to figure that out. And, this rotation, Billy Donovan, Arturas talked about going deep into the bench, talked about using their full roster. Everybody that came up there talked about, how they're going to, use or do everything as a team, how it's going to take a team effort to get certain things done. And I think that's a good place to be in as well with your franchise, that everybody seems locked and loaded, right? And I get it. It's training camp. It's easy to seem locked and loaded, here before any game start, any type of adversity kicks in for real. But everybody seems kind of on the same page right now. Even Nikola Vucevic, I know, Vuce saying, while I'm here, like 15 times in the last, in his portion of media day, and that's led a lot of people to be like, oh, Vuce, he's on his way out. He's on his way out. Like, it is what it is. But I love also that this front office seems like they are back on a track and a vision. Now, how well they're going to execute that is one of the questions, right? And this is where I run some problems with some of Bulls media, right? And I want to be clear here. And I'll say this, and if it makes people feel away, it makes people feel away. It's not attached or attacking one specific person, but I'm going to say it. People who heard things like AK say, oh, well, we want to deal with physicality better. And, we realized in the Miami Heat, that playing game that we didn't deal with physicality in every player that came after that. Coby talked about it. Josh Giddey talked about it. Modest talked about it. Ayo talked about it, like dealing with the physicality. Like the same people that made a problem and said, oh, well, look at the Bulls. They didn't deal with this well. Now that AK came out and said it, and they're like, oh, well, look at this now. Oh, by the way, the Miami Heat didn't go on and do much in the playoffs. Like, do you want them to learn to deal with physicality? Like, that's a pivot point, right? It's in no way that the only time they didn't deal well with physicality was against the Miami Heat. So now that we're saying that a team recognized one of their shortcomings, and this is where I get into this place that so many Bulls fans are at with this team, is honestly, and I'm just going to be frank, people just want to bitch about stuff, right? And that may make some people feel a type of way. Like I said, this isn't directed at any one person or set of individuals or anything like that, but people just want to bitch. And it gets to a point where it's like, what are you fucking complaining about? If you say that the Bulls didn't deal with physicality well, if you've been making fun all offseason of, well, look how the Chicago Bulls, look what happened in the play-in. Look what happened against Miami. Oh, they got a wake-up call against Miami. March didn't matter. Miami. This is why March basketball. And then you hear the team. You hear the coach. You hear the president of basketball operations talk about it and say, we realize that one of the things that we have to do to get better is we have to be a more physical team. We have to understand how to deal with physicality better. And that acknowledgement and that awareness, you then take that as something more further to bitch about. What do you want? What is your real aim in this? And that's where some of this gets to, where people get so caught up in just complaining, bitching, and moaning that it's a progress. You think it's going to flip a switch and all of a sudden they're going to handle it? No, you have to first identify the problem, and then you have to go out there and try to attack it, right? And no, for those that are like, well, if they really wanted to deal with physicality, they would have traded the whole roster. That's not dealing with physicality. That's making a change. Like, these players have to learn to deal with that. And I hate to tell y'all this, as much as some people whine and complain, a lot of these Bulls players are going to be here. And guess what? For the ones that are going to be here, that are the ones that are under contract, they have to learn to deal with that better if they want to be a better team. And I love to hear that this team recognized that, and it seems like it's a modif that everybody on the roster realizes we got to be more physical. Now, I will say this as well, is that taking the part of, like, talking about Isaac Okoro and the physicality that he brings is great, because he hopefully is going to bring some of that. But you can't have a player in Isaac Okoro who was a role player in Cleveland come in and be the only thing that changes and dictates your physicality as a team. You need to be better than that. You need to be in a place where you're able to, as a full team, you need to be mentally prepared and ready for the battles and the rigors that is going to come on. Because if all teams got to do with you is muck up the game and get physical to throw you completely off your rocker, then it's going to be more difficult to deal with. But like I said, at this point, I think we've started to realize and separate the people who actually want this team to get better and the people who are just going to bitch until the team does something drastic, and then they're going to say, "Oh, finally!" Like you can't wait till the team achieves it and then not bitch about it, right? Like you can't wait till a team gets to the point and then say, "Oh, well, now that we're winning, it's a process to get there." And one thing that also came out of this media day that I love that they said they're not skipping steps. So all my Bulls fans that are sitting there hoping that the Bulls are going to trade for Zion or trade for X name star, it doesn't seem like that's the mindset of where this team is now. And, not to say that situation may not present itself later down the road and the Bulls may want to capitalize on it, but something that I've said for so long with this team, and I'm going to continue to say because I truly feel this way in sports. When you skip steps, when you get to a place of you are trading future first for just to become a playoff team. Lots of them, right? The Bulls traded 3 to 4 first round picks to get DeMar, Vooch, and all those guys here. That's not what you can do. Now, I'm not saying that you can't trade a first for a young player like a Walker Kessler that eliminates something that you need on this roster that you would be looking for that first round pick anyway, but don't go star hunting. And that doesn't seem like what this team is going to do. They are going to develop till they get this team to a certain point of a proof of concept. And then at that point, all right, that may open up some things. Maybe that does happen as soon as this offseason. Maybe Modest does hit that instrumental leap that we're looking for from him. Maybe Josh Giddey hits another step up and those type of things happen as well. And then maybe we're talking about that this offseason. But the Bulls, at the front office actually seems like they're locked in and focused with now actually developing here, right? Hearing that Buzelis said that he's been working with the player development department all summer to get his body ready, to make sure that he's getting stronger without, losing some of the agility. Those are all great things to have. And to hear, we're going to hear more on that as far as Buzelis here in a second. But here's the thing. The not skipping steps are great. And I get it. The Bulls have been running in place for a long time. But this quote that we said, we'll probably stay present in the moment. We'll look at this year with the team and how we're going to start, how we're going to go through the season, all of those concrete goals and how we want to play. We're likely to have to play long rotations as we want to play at a fast pace. So we'll see during the year, and that information collection is going to help us make those decisions. What have I been saying for most of the offseason? This season coming up is going to be a season where it's an evaluation year. And AK said it himself when he said, "Hey, we're evaluating for long-term fit. As many players as we have that are coming up as free agents, we're looking at the long-term fit of what fits with the players that we have here, what fits the way that we want to play, and the direction that we want to go." I get it. So many Bulls fans are butthurt and their whole thing of, "Oh, well, we should tank to get picks." I get that. I understand the mindset. But again, as I've said many times before, this front office has signaled, they have shown that is not the way that they are going to do things. They are not going to do that. They're going to do similar to what the Denver Nuggets did, right? Never tanked. Never, I think, dropped below 40 wins, if I'm not mistaken. Maybe it was like 37 wins, something like that. And so the Bulls are hoping to be along that pace, and we'll see what the progress can make. But at some point, all the whining, all the moaning, people who bring in so much stuff from the last build of this team, all this other stuff, you got to let that go. This is a team now that has rediscovered their pace. And like I said, they've gone from an older team in the NBA to one of the youngest teams. They would be the youngest team in the NBA if Vooch wasn't on this team. That's the youth that you have here. And not everybody's going to make it. Dalen and Julian, they may not make it. They may not be in the next phase of this team. They just may not be. Ayo, could he be traded? Maybe. We'll see what happens there. But I think overall, it's just, in watching the dishonesty in the way that the Bulls are covered and the inconsistent nature in which the Bulls are covered, how you bitch about one thing and then they recognize. Now, again, granted, if somebody wanted to say, and I don't mean critique as bitching, but if somebody wanted, for example, to say, "Hey, the Bulls say they want to deal with physicality. I don't believe it until I see them do it more consistently." Absolutely. You're not crazy for wanting to see something before you fully believe in it, right? And because right now it's easy to pay lip service to stuff. It's very easy to pay lip service to stuff right now because you haven't played a game, right? And optimism is at its almost highest right now in what you've done in the offseason. So I'm not saying that legitimate criticism is something that's unwarranted. No, it is. But some people, guys bitching under the guise of criticism, and it's not that. And you can tell when people do that, the Kelders of the world and other things of that. Now, that's honestly just a friendly jab to Kelder. But that do those type of things to that. And at the end of the day, they have to prove it. But you can't prove something and you can't accomplish something if you don't acknowledge it. So right now, the Bulls are in the spot of they have the opportunity to acknowledge some of the things that went wrong, some of the things that have limited this team, some of the things that haven't been where it needs to be. They don't have a chance yet until they take the basketball court to prove how much they've really put in work to try to fix those things. And I think that it's okay right now to say, all right, they said this. Let's see them go out and do it. And we'll see. And we'll be here evaluating it all during the course of the season. We're going to be monitoring. We're going to be talking about it. We're here every single day. And we'll see what happens when it comes down to that. The Bulls, it seems like they have rediscovered the original path that they said when AK came in here. Build organically, develop, do it through the draft, right? Young players. That's what it seems like the Bulls are at right now. And I tell you what, that is the more sustainable route. And that is also the route that, and listen, for the people that complain, like, do you really want to deal with 2 tanking seasons? Do you really? Because I guarantee you the same people that are like, we should tank for picks. And then we tank, and don't let that player you tank for not look like a star by year 2. Then they're going to be bitching about that too, right? So you're damned if you do, damned if you don't place. But I think ultimately, we'll see what the Bulls come out of this with. Now, I do want to talk a little bit about Modest Buzelis because, as always, Modest is really the thing to talk about. He had several quotes to come away from this that I think really, if he accomplishes these things and it sets a tone for the team, not to say that Modest it needs to set the tone, but it's just as Modest grows in this franchise, he could be the tone setter. And so, Modest Buzelis talked about what he put in this offseason. We talked a little bit about that earlier, making sure that he, balance between adding muscle but maintaining his mobility, his speed, because of what that does to his game. That's really good, right? He talked about the player development staff, working with those guys over the course of the summer. That's all important. One of the things that I do think could have been one of the reasons, I think there are a lot of things, his own mental, but that hurt P. Will is that he put on muscle so fast that I think that he lost some of his agility. He lost some of that mobility. And, he did that to play power forward. I think Modest kind of realizes I need to get stronger, but, I don't want to lose any of that. Even here in Ayo Dosunmu, talk about the sky's the limit for Modest Buzelis. And Modest talked about how Ayo's been working with them to kind of overcome some of the things that Ayo dealt with in his second year. Ayo went through a big second-year slump, right? And so that's really good to hear when it comes down to that. The mentality that Modest Buzelis has is undoubtedly some of the best that you see on this Bulls team. It's just undoubtedly that, right? And he said this, I always think like this. If somebody has done it, I can do it. If nobody's done it, I'm going to be the first to do it. That is what is so encouraging about a player like Modest Buzelis with his mindset. And to hear that Noah Essengate has a lot of that same thing as far as playing basketball-wise. He's not as outgoing as talkative, but as far as the drive to be great in basketball, seems like Noah Essengate has a lot of those same things. That's really good to hear. Modest also was asked about if he could be an all defensive type team player this season, where he just said yes. He says, I've been telling the coaching staff I want to be coached as an all defensive guy. I want to be held accountable. It doesn't matter if it's being yelled at in front of everyone, in solitude, in video. It doesn't matter to me. I want to be coached and held to that standard. And in the media, that's fine with me. Modest is welcoming all comers. He's welcoming all the smoke, if we're just going to dumb it down in that way. And, that could come back to bite him in his ass. And Billy Donovan talked about it like there are going to be teams that they're now scheming for you. Not to say just for Modest Buzelis, but now they are looking at Modest. He's going to be in the rotation. They're going to be coming up with things to throw off Modest off his game, to attack him defensively, things like that. So this is going to be his second year of Modest Buzelis, where you're really going to get an opportunity to look at him. And I talked about how Coby White being out in preseason. Does Modest step up for the scoring load in preseason and show and flash maybe he's more ready scoring-wise and to be a better scorer for the Bulls this year? The one thing that Modest Buzelis also said is that he wants to win Most Improved Player. I loved hearing that from him. He wants to win Most Improved Player. So I went and looked, how many players have won Most Improved Player in their second year? There have only been 7 players ever to win Most Improved in their second year of basketball. The first to do it was Alvin Robertson in the 85-86 season, Kevin Duckworth in 87-88, Kevin Johnson in 88-89, and then Ron Seekley in 89-90, and then you had Don McLean in 93-94, and then the last 2 to do it were Gilbert Arenas in the 2022-23 season and Monte Ellis in the 26-27 season. So we're talking about it's been almost 20 years since a player won Most Improved Player in their second year of basketball. That's huge. And when you look at all these guys, only one of these guys averaged over 20 points in their second year, and that was Kevin Johnson. You look at, for example, Monte Ellis, the year he did it, only averaged 16.5 points per game. Gilbert Arenas, the year he won Most Improved Player, only 18.3 points per game. Now, they both played well over 30 minutes per game, and we'll look and see if Modest Buzelis could do that. But Modest does have a case that, that if he just upticks his scoring average by 3-4 points, you're talking about him being in that range. Now, I think that it has to be a narrative thing. All eyes on Modest Buzelis. He's going to have to step up in big moments. But if he makes the step defensively and a step offensively this year, there's definitely a case to be made that Modest Buzelis could get in that conversation. So Modest has set a lofty goal for himself. And what have I always said? I love being able to hold players accountable to what they say they want for themselves. Let's see if Modest says he wants it. Let's see if he's going to go out there and achieve and if he can get it done. We shall see, right? But we'll see there. Now, there's also been a lot of speculation on Ayo and his role. And we'll get into that more, I think, in tomorrow's episode because I kind of want to break some of that down. But, overall, I walk away from training camp feeling, okay, I feel like we have a lot of data of what this Bulls team is hoping to accomplish, what they're hoping to do, both individually for the players and collectively as a team. And the thing that I feel the most thing is that this team really does seem connected. Now, let's see if they can go out there and make some shit happen. But that's my time for today, guys. Thank you guys so much for tuning in. Make sure you guys are following us at Bulls Central Pod. You can send us any feedback, questions, comments, concerns, bullscentralpod@gmail.com. Lastly, if you want to leave a text message and our voicemail for the mailbag, the number to do so, 773-270-2799. We are the number one spot for everything Chicago Bulls related. And like I like to end every episode on, go Bulls. Love you guys. See you right if you can, y'all. Peace.
This has been a presentation of the Breaks Media.